Hey guys, somebody was asking about the QTS. So, okay, there's FS, QTS, and VAS. So, FS is the resonant frequency. It's the frequency at which the subwoofer resonates. That it's called the fundamental frequency. So, all objects in space have a fundamental frequency. And so in subwoofers though, typically a nice one is going to be in the 30s, like 30 hertz range, something like that, 32, whatever. So, and hertz is cycles per second. So 32 cycles per second. Now QTS is the Q of the total system. That's what QTS stands for. So, which is a combination of the QMS, which is the mechanical system, and the QES, which is an electrical system. So because that's what a subwoofer is, it's an electromechanical device. And a real peaky subwoofer will have, it'll have like an impedance sweep that looks like this. Like that, something like that. And then this is, let's say this is, we'll say that, right there, that's 32 hertz. So this is a pretty peaky subwoofer. So some other subwoofers will have a smaller Q like that. How do I say this? Home audio guys, right? Like if you read the Vance Dickinson's loudspeaker cookbook, sometimes they try to make a recommendation about, you know, a subwoofer with a low QTS, like anywhere from a 0.2, 0.3, is better for sealed boxes, and it's not necessarily better for sealed boxes. It just happens to roll off fine. And so real quick, I mean, if we were in a restaurant, I'd do these on back of napkins. So here's your SPL, and then here's your frequency. So, and then here's your 20, and then we'll just say, I don't know, 200. So typically what happens is the response is pretty flat otherwise, and then in like a free air situation, it's going to be real shallow. And then in a sealed box, it's going to be somewhat more. So this is your -6 dB slope, and then this is a -12. And then you're going to have a bass reflex going to be pretty sharp like that. And then again, this is going to be right around 32 hertz. Fuck the scale, it's just so whatever. So typically the subwoofer does not play much. Maybe down 3 dB or something like that around the resonant frequency. And so when you have a QTS that's kind of shallow, all that means is that it's not going to have a dramatic roll off, a steep roll off. So this is typically what's like a ported box, which is 18 to 24. It depends on how sudden that drop off is. So what they're trying to explain is that when the QTS is low, like at a 0.2, 0.3, even up to a 0.4, typically the rule is anything from 0.5 and below is going to be better in sealed boxes. And now when I say better, that's not necessarily performance. What they're talking about is a practical application. So sometimes you'll get a woofer that's pretty big, like an 18, but it has a low Q. And so if you want to put it in a porta box, typically the VAS will be quite large. So like, 10 cubic feet, something like that. And so is it better to put it in a porta box? Always. You're always going to get a free bass boost depending on how you manipulate that in a porta box. The problem is that you don't want to build a fucking 10 cubic foot box, especially if it's, going in the back of a Civic or something like that or whatever. Excuse me. And so it's not that the QTS determines the box. It's a guide. So, and especially when you put this into a box builder program, again, the box builder program is a guide. It depends on your final application, how you're using it, and things like that. Now, there's other times like where, like, say you have a large woofer, like an 18 or something like that, and it's got kind of a small magnet. That's going to have typically a low QTS. Again, though, it depends on how heavy the coil is. You can make the QTS rise or grow or however you want to say it. You can manipulate it if it has like a heavier coil. So if it has a heavy coil with a soft suspension, it's going to have a more dramatic roll off. And so, but because the VAS or the magnet is so small, it's going to have a really large VAS. So it's going to need a very large box in order to meet that resonant frequency. So, because that's what the VAS is. The VAS is simply the equivalent amount of airspace required to reach the FS for the driver, right? So the other thing is that sometimes, especially like with an 18, let's say the FS is like 28, right? Which everybody thinks they want, which is not true. And your VAS is still at 10 cubic foot. What you can do is you can sacrifice some of the VAS, right? Because you don't need to hit 28. Typically, you want to tune to about no lower than 30. The sweet spot is typically anywhere from 33 to 35 hertz. And what happens is in your response, you get a nice little whoop, like that. You get a little boost, which people love because it's free, and you don't even have to use an equalizer. Again, there's also nothing wrong with using an equalizer. Sometimes you can just use a sealed box, and then you give it like plus 12 dB, and what that's going to do is going to raise this, whatever your bass boost is at. Let's say if this is 32 and that's 20, so let's say it's at 25. It's going to give you a nice boost, and then it's going to drop off. So, a bass boost is not bad. It's just an equalizer. Typically, a bass boost is just a one-band equalizer. So, but back to what you can do is you can shave or compromise on the VAS required if you don't need to hit the resonant frequency. So let's say you want to tune to like say 35 hertz. It's going to be a more efficient system, meaning it's going to have better output with less input, but you're sacrificing depth. But it's okay because there's not really anything below 30 hertz except for explosions. So, and if you're not listening to explosions, don't fucking do it. Then you get floppy butthole on the subwoofer. That's what's called unloading, and it's where it just resonates real easy. And does it look cool? Sure. But it doesn't sound like anything. It's floppy butthole. You hear a lot of mechanical noise. You hear a lot of whooshing. There's not even a lot of pressure. And that's because your resonant frequency right here. This is an impedance peak. So that impedance peak can be upwards of like 50 ohms. So there's not going to be a lot of power that you can put into it because you got to load down your amplifier anyway. So. But that's just a little brief thing about QTS. Again, there's things that you can squeeze and manipulate depending on your application. And that's where it really boils down to. And that's really what I discovered when somebody asked me, they're like, how do you design a loudspeaker? And I'm like, you really need to know the application first of what you're trying to do. And then it's better to either build it or pick a subwoofer that's more akin to your application, right? So like I had a client the other day talking about, they had a SCAR DDX10 and the FS was like 47 hertz. And I'm like, there's nothing you can do with that fucking woofer except for like SPL. And because it's only like a 600 watt driver, it's not really great for that either. So it's again, and there's not much you can do to manipulate it. So like in that case, you can either make it heavier to get a lower FS, but the amount of mass you have to add is like a lot, like a pound, like it's ridiculous. The better way to do it is to use a softer suspension, but the woofer's fine, it works, so that's not really a choice that you can do. So, but again, it really depends on your application, what you're trying to do. And now there are some rules that I like to employ, which is just be reasonable. Have some reason, you know. Now, if you're like it's a home theater and you're like, I don't mind a 10 or a 12 cubic foot box because we're going to build it into the coffee table. So we're going to have a big coffee table. It's going to be finished really cool. We're going to put like memorabilia on it and then cover it in epoxy, clear epoxy. And so everybody can see it and it's going to be rad. That is fine because it serves a function as a table, but it's also a subwoofer, And so that's where you sort of blend budget with application, with driver performance together. And that's really the art of subwoofer building and applications as far as, how do you integrate this device into your life in a reasonable way? So there's an old home audio factor that they call it. It's called spousal approval factor. You can make all the subwoofers you want, but if your spouse does not approve of it, then guess what? You're going to be out on your ass. And I've met clients that have been addicted so bad that their spouse divorced them. So that's too far. That's not reasonable. You got to be reasonable. And so that's why it's good to just sort of bounce it around other people, and then especially me, because I will ground you immediately. And that can be a pun for, because you're a dumb child or because, electrical as far as grounding goes. You got to be reasonable. So otherwise you're going to end up with, that's where you end up with fucking $1,000 shoes. Like, what are you doing with $1,000 shoes? We go to the Olive Garden and we're regulars over here. And our friend, she's the bartender. She was talking about her husband wanted $1,000, were they Gucci? Louis Vuitton, whatever. It doesn't matter. That's ridiculous. It's so stupid. Why don't you just get gold-plated toilet paper? Like, what the fuck are you doing? So it's important to have constraints on your application as well, because that's actually what creates style, right? Style is really important, and style can also be an engineering feat, right? It's in design. Some of the best designs are very elegant and very simple, and they address all the aspects of the application that you're using the device in. So, and that's what they teach you in design school. You don't even have to go to design school in order to learn that. So it's important to have balance, and that's what yin and yang are about. It's about finding the balance and the center, and then to me, that's the perfect product. Is something that's affordable, it's effective, and it's aesthetically pleasing, and everyone enjoys it, and it gets lots of years of use. That's what I shoot for, okay? So, but if you want to get into esoteric shit, which is really more just working versions of art, that's a whole other game. And you better break out your checkbook, because you're going to have to write a fucking check on that shit, because it's a lot of money, and it can go to anything. What was it? I was reading an article this morning about how this artist had given 2 large blank canvases to a modern art museum. They had paid him, they had commissioned him for $84,000. And he titled the works. It was just a blank canvas. He titled the works, Get the Money and Run, which is in a sense, it's very, very clever, right? And it's lazy, but it's also very clever and a very elegant solution to their problem, which was, and you could actually look at it in a sense that he was poking fun of them. And so, and art like that exists everywhere. So one of my favorite stories, and again, I cannot find this. I think I've talked about this before in a video. The story that I heard was, what's his name? God damn, I just forgot his name. Did the Campbell Soup can? Andy Warhol. Okay, so Andy Warhol was commissioned by the city of Chicago. This is the story I heard, but I cannot find anything about it on the internet. He was commissioned by the city of Chicago because at the time he was, New York's sweetheart as far as art scene and things like that. And so city of Chicago was like, hey, Andy, can you come do, a really great sculpture for us? And he's like, yeah, no problem. And so they gave him a bunch of money. And what he did was he made like a bronze turd, like a piece of fecal matter. And it's like, I think it was like 7 or 8 feet tall or something like that. And of course he unveils it. And he, again, he's poking fun at them of being always, second fiddle. And what's funny though is of course they're offended, but it's a Warhol. And that's the rub. So it's a Warhol, so they kept it. And so I think what happened was they, of course, after Andy died, I think they reasoned with the Warhol Foundation on getting Chicago some real art, something significant, not a turd. But of course, because of that story, and again, I don't know who told me that. I thought it was a fascinating story, and it's definitely right there in the art world with Damien, what's his name, that put Saddam Hussein underwater, and all of those guys. It's a balance between what is offensive and what is beautiful, right? And sometimes things that are beautiful can also be offensive. So there's always a balance, and really it's about what you can get away with, right? Even with a spousal approval factor, you still have to figure out what you can get away with. Or if it's your budget, you got to figure out what you can afford and get away with. So you're like, well, fuck it, I'll make payments. Now you can afford more shit. So, but anyways, I love you guys. I will talk to you later. I've just been super busy on orders, and I have to custom pack every subwoofer that leaves here, and so it just takes more of my time. And so again, I'm working very hard, and I thank you all for your support. I hope you enjoy this video, and if you can, guys, share the channel. So share this knowledge. This doesn't do me any good at this point. My market is saturated as far as applying my knowledge to my life. Like, this is all old news to me, but to a lot of you guys learning, I want you to understand this so that you aren't guided by the nose, or by the bull ring, by audio companies, because you got to remember that they're looking out to line their pockets. That's the only thing they're doing. There's some guy, Colby Doby in New Mexico. He pointed out some guy, I forget, I think it's MB Enclosures, I think it's called. This guy, he's an idiot. And he knows it too. He knows he's shucking and jiving you guys and pulling on your strings. He's a tool for, in this right now, he's a tool for kicker. So, and he was comparing the Square Q Series 8 to the Sundown, whatever 8 Sundown has, and literally they're both turds. So they're both overpriced, shitty speakers that you should not buy. But he doesn't have the integrity to say that. So instead he's like, sucking kicker's dick. Jacob, no, I don't like that dick. But he's got the other dick in his hand. So, because if you didn't want the other dick in your hand, you wouldn't even show that fucking woofer. You would just show kicker. So again, look for people like this, dude. And that's the freedom that I do not ever want to give up, is the ability to criticize anyone and any product, including my own. And that's why you'll see that in my work, is that there's always a balance between performance and cosmetics and value. If it's ugly, it's going to cost less, right? But your ears don't see it, so it's okay. And that's why a lot of my subwoofers are turds as far as cosmetics go. As far as performance and value, oh my God, fucking aces, tits up McGee, all that kind of shit. So again, it depends on what your priorities are. A lot of guys that cosmetics and status, that's JL Audio. That's your boy right there. You want to show the world and tell everybody that you're rich and that you're successful. Drive a BMW loaded with JL Audio. There you go. That's the magic formula. And then you're going to get all the pussy in the world, right? No. And it's funny. I was listening to a Thrift Shop the other day by Macklemore. And I love the bass line on it. It's fucking amazing. It just shakes the whole fucking warehouse. But that's my theme song right there, Thrift Shop. It's like, it's 99 cents. Why do you fucking care? You know what I mean? So what if it smells like piss? It's a fur fucking coat for 99 cents. So the idea is that, relax. This is not the end of the world. And it's, when you seek status, the problem is you get into a competition with a bunch of other assholes. And there's always an asshole that's way more powerful than you. And so you're always going to get clowned, no matter what. So you might as well learn how to be yourself on your budget. And if the world doesn't like you, fuck them. That's you. If you're, that's the worst thing in the world, because if you're faking and they still don't like you, like how are they going to like the real you? You know what I'm saying? So it's better and easier, and it's much more efficient on your processing, your CPU cycles on your brain, if you just become yourself and then either create or find an environment that is receptive to you, right? Your people. That's what your people are. So be around your people that accept you, that loved you for you and the arm growing out of the side of your neck. So I got breakfast here. It's getting cold, but I love you guys. That's QTS for the day, and we'll talk to you later.